for dinner tonight. So with that, I'd like to welcome Kathy Bunting-Howarth, who's Director of Water Resources with the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control.
Good afternoon. I have the pleasure of introducing one of the first state's finest. He is a very loyal blue hen and a great dad. He took his 10-year-old son to Texas to watch the University of Delaware Blue Hens playing a game, and it was great for the first 3 quarters. Then this esteemed individual flew back to Philadelphia because he had tickets to the Eagles game. So close. Fortunately, this gentleman had to sell or give away his Flyers tickets. So fortunately, they were able to prevail on Saturday. But Mr. Sean Garvin is here today because he has over 20 years of experience with government in the federal and local levels. Before he became administrator of EPA's Region 3, he was the senior state and congressional liaison, in which he provided counsel to agency leadership and environmental program managers, press officers, and others involved in complex and controversial public health and environmental matters. One of those people was me from time to time. Sean's contributions to high-profile environmental litigation cases, emergency response cleanups, contamination investigations, and public health crises have earned him numerous EPA gold, silver, and bronze medals. He's a native Delawarean, and I'm very proud to introduce Sean Garvin.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate that. As Kathy pointed out, I did have a very trying sports weekend. I got a text message from my sister on Sunday night after I got back from the Eagles game that said, if the Flyers make the Stanley Cup Finals again, you are not allowed to go. So what Kathy didn't also point out was that I had that same 10-year-old son with me when we watched the Phillies lose Game 6 to San Francisco. So I have not had a very good sports year. Thankfully, the TMDL went a lot better than my sports have come. So, but I really, really want to thank you all for having me here today. To be in this room by so many passionate and inspiring people just kind of, again, just solidifies why I do what I do and why you do what you do. The only way that we're really going to be able to focus on addressing environmental issues is us doing it all together and being able to marshal the forces to address these problems. And clean water is clearly one of those, and I'm here to talk about one of the highest profile clean water issues that we've been dealing with at EPA, our national treasure, the Chesapeake Bay. Now, as I assume all of you know, on December 29th, Judith Thank, the regional administrator from Region 2, who has New York in her region, and I signed and established the final Chesapeake Bay TMDL. This is a truly historic event that culminates over 25 plus years of bay restoration efforts. We have made a lot of progress, and I always try to stress this whenever talking about the Chesapeake Bay, and particularly the TMDL. A lot of progress has been made over the years in addressing the Chesapeake Bay. But TMDL was established because we were making insufficient progress into actually taking the Chesapeake Bay off of the dirty waters list, the EPA's impaired waters list. As you know, Chesapeake Bay TMDL is a cornerstone of the federal strategy implementing President Obama's executive order for restoring the Chesapeake Bay. The final TMDL is a product of extensive input from public, the jurisdictions, and stakeholder groups throughout the process. We received more than 14,000 comments throughout the process, and a vast majority of them were in favor of the TMDL. I want to thank all of you. I know you put a lot of energy and time and hard work into gathering widespread vocal support for the TMDL and the Watershed Implementation Plans. I sincerely thank all of the jurisdictions and stakeholders for their participation. EPA has been working with the states and stakeholders for almost 2 years in the development of the TMDL and the WIPs, including with the development community, the ag industry, local government, watershed and wastewater agencies, and others. Moreover, EPA worked very closely with the states and the District of Columbia over the past several months in order to help them and us improve the draft watershed implementation plans that were submitted in September. The September plans were, as I described, kind of the pencil down moment. We worked on getting the TMDL, putting together the watershed implementation plans, and September we said, pencils down, let's see where we all are. And we developed a draft TMDL based on that product, recognizing that there was a lot of work still to be done, recognizing that there was additional things that the jurisdictions were looking to do and just didn't have an opportunity to develop it fully when the pencils had to go down. So we spent a lot of time, literally daily conversations with each of the jurisdictions, making sure that we could recognize and find out all those other things that were not yet included. In the final TMDL, unlike the draft TMDL issued in September, the final allocation are based almost completely on allocations proposed by the 7 Bay jurisdictions in their final watershed implementation plans. This was our goal from the outset, to provide the states the flexibility and let them lead the way in determining how to reduce pollution to restore the bay. With the exception of one jurisdiction, all have hit their allocations for nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment in the final TMDL, and all jurisdictions have committed to meeting their allocations by 2017 and 2025, and one jurisdiction is looking to do it even sooner. There are many examples of noteworthy improvements to the draft WIPs. For instance, commitments to more stringent nitrogen and phosphorus controls at wastewater treatment plants, greater accountability for urban stormwater programs, more detailed and explicit stormwater management programs that can be easily translated into permit conditions, commitments to stronger stormwater permit requirements and regulatory programs, new enforcement and compliance initiatives for agriculture, commitment of state funding to develop and implement state-of-the-art technologies for managing animal waste, and pursuit of contingencies, including mandatory programs by 2013 if pollution reduction from agriculture falls behind schedule. As a result of our close collaboration and these many improvements, we were able to reduce or remove most of the federal backstop measures, with just a few exceptions where states did not provide us with reasonable assurance they could achieve the necessary pollution reductions. This leaves only a few targeted backstops and contingencies to ensure progress. These include 3 tiers of EPA action and oversight in the TMDL. The first being ongoing oversight for all Chesapeake Bay jurisdictions. This includes ongoing review of programs and permits, an assessment of how the jurisdictions are implementing the TMDL and the WIPs through phase 2 and 2-year milestones. Pretty much all the sectors, all the jurisdictions will continue to have ongoing oversight. The second tier, enhanced oversight, will be an indication that EPA may consider backstop allocation and adjustments if phase 2 WIPs don't show progress in specific states and sectors. In Virginia, we were focusing on stormwater, Pennsylvania on agriculture and wastewater, and West Virginia wastewater and stormwater. And the third tier, backstop allocation and adjustments, are backstops that are included in the final TMDL. In those areas, it's New York wastewater, Pennsylvania stormwater, and West Virginia agriculture. Further, if states don't make sufficient progress, EPA will utilize contingencies to place additional controls on permanent sources of pollution such as wastewater treatment plants, large animal agriculture operations, and municipal stormwater systems. But we're looking to move ahead. Now we begin the hard part, which is implementing these pollution controls on the ground and in the water with rigorous accountability to restore the bay and the region's streams and rivers. The issuance of the TMDL has never been the end. It's just the beginning. It has set out what the starting line is for us to get to restoration between now and 2025. EPA will also provide ongoing oversight of all sectors in all of the Bay states and the district, particularly focusing on meeting the 2-year milestones. The next thing that we're going to be focusing on is the phase 2 WIPs. And I understand that Jim Edwards will be moderating a panel tomorrow morning focusing on phase 2 and the local pilot projects that are underway, and I urge you all to attend that. Lessons learned from these pilot projects will inform how the states develop phase 2 WIPs. Phase 2 is about getting local with proposed practices and programs. Phase 2 is about further improving reasonable assurance and accountability. Phase 2 is about getting buy-in at the local level. As I've committed over the past year, EPA is making 2 refinements to the watershed model, one focusing on nutrient management and the other one focusing on low-density urban land use. This provides an opportunity for modification of state basin allocations if necessary. I've also made it clear that Phase 2 is an integral part of the reasonable assurance determination. We need to show that we can make this happen on the ground at the local level. As I told the jurisdictions at the last PSC meeting, give us strong Phase 1's whips and we'll talk about Phase 2 schedule. The jurisdictions delivered on their end and we'll be discussing adjustments to the Phase 2 schedule in the future. We can't extend it too much, but we need to make sure that we have ample time to provide revised model results and states have time to engage local governments. Again, Phase 2 is a necessity to complete reasonable assurance package. And we have time and we know how and what we need to do. It's important to remember that this is not an overnight project. We have 15 years to implement these pollution controls and we will adapt and change along the way if necessary. At the same time, don't forget, we're not starting from scratch. This is not rushed. We've been attempting to restore the bay for over 25 years. In the end, this will represent a half-century of restoration efforts. So you might ask, what role can you all play moving forward? What do we need from the coalition? Where can you help? Education will be key as we ramp up implementation. You're good educators and you carry that message to all of your members. Keep open lines of communication with the states. Keep your eyes and ears open. What's working, what's not? Are there new technologies out there? Help transfer that knowledge to each other and into each jurisdiction. Capitalize on what others do. We can do this. We can do this. Don't forget. Help us get local. Make sure we have the same support at the local level that we now have at the state level. I ask you to use the WIPs and the 2-year milestones as a roadmap for your work as you talk about restoring the Chesapeake Bay. Help the states get the tools they need. We can't rest. While the establishment of the TMDL is an historic occasion and we have much to be proud of, we cannot be satisfied until the bay and the tidal tributaries are restored to health. Restoration activities will protect the economic value of the bay and the local waterways and will be drivers for local economies. Again, let me thank all of you for all of your valuable input and support and all the hard work that you do every day. It's a very impressive collective group of organizations that make up the Clean Water Coalition. And I have to say that our success is going to be based on the work, your continued work, moving into the future. We value your support, and we're thankful for all you've done, and without it, we wouldn't be able to make the efforts that we're making. So thank you, and keep it up.
Come on up, everybody. All right, how's everybody doing? You got enough energy in you for about another 45 minutes or an hour? Then alcohol. So, little quiz at the end. If you get 8 out of 10 correct, you get to go to the happy hour. Thank you very much, Sean, for those remarks. And what we're going to do now is have a little bit of a panel discussion. And I believe part of the description for this panel said that we're going to hear from each state's perspective on the Chesapeake Bay TMDL and the Watershed Implementation Plan process. So I thought I would take maybe 2 minutes and give you a little bit of input on my perspective. And thank you for letting me be here. I always feel like I'm at a family reunion when I see all these faces out here. It's great. I'm Jeff Corbin. I'm with EPA. I'm the senior advisor to Sean Garvin, and I've been doing that since about February. And since then, before then, I had the privilege of serving Governor Kane in Virginia as his Assistant Secretary of Natural Resources. And before that, I was a member of the conservation community for many years. So it's great to be back. So I've been doing this for about 15 years, bay restoration efforts, and I know what you're thinking, how can a guy so youthful, they've been doing this for 15 years, but I have been. I ask myself that every morning. But we finished the TMDL, and there was some bumps in the road getting to this point and getting everybody on board with the TMDL. But it is where it is. I mean, we are in this process. We've been trying to restore the bay for 30 years, and I think all of us sort of knew in the back of our head that we were going to make progress and we were going to make it pretty far. But someday we would probably end up having to deal with this TMDL thing. And I don't think it's all that bad. I mean, the TMDL is about accountability, and the TMDL is about showing stepwise progress. And I don't see either one of those two things as being all that onerous. And that didn't really come about just because of the TMDL, because for those of you that were around in 2009 when the Executive Council got together, the governors and the DC mayor and the administrator and the chair of the Bay Commission, and then they said no more 10, 15, 20-year commitments, 2-year milestones, annual progress. We'll come back here, we'll stand at the podium, hold us accountable. And that was the message to the public. And that's what the TMDL and the Watershed Implementation Plans do. So I want to give thanks to all my jurisdictional partners up here. And unfortunately, we're missing West Virginia and New York are not here today. So, but we have 5 of the 7 here. And I want to give a big thank you to them, because it was a huge lift to get through the past year and get draft implementation plans done, and very, very, very strong, very significantly improved final watershed implementation plans. And due to political reasons and a bunch of other reasons, a lot of states could have taken very different approaches and chose not to do it, or chose to turn in a plan that wasn't as good as it should have been, and they didn't. Every single one of them chose to put the pedal down and get this done. And we ended up in a place where the TMDL was done when we said we're going to get it done, and all the watershed implementation plans are pretty darn strong. And myself, and I'll bet them, and I'll bet all of you, if you would have been asked a year ago if we would have gotten all that done by the end of 2010, the answer probably would have been, I'm not taking that bet. But we did. We got it done. So my only message to you today is that the partnership has to stay strong, because we're going to hit obstacles. The TMDL's done. The watershed implementation plans are done. Now we got to implement, as Sean said, and we're going to hit obstacles. And some of them are going to be pretty significant. But if the program remains strong, I think we can get it done. And when I say we, I mean we in the big sense of we. So thank you to the states, and thank you to all of you, because I don't know if Sean mentioned it in his remarks, we got 14,000 public comments. You guys put the pressure on EPA and on the states to get it done, and it worked. So thank you for all that you've done over the last year or two as well. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to introduce, I guess, one by one here, the panel members, and we'll have them each talk for about 40, 50 minutes each, and then now five or so minutes each, and then we'll open it up, and I'll moderate some question and answer with you all. So we're just going to go in this order, guys? Is that what y'all? Okay. Mr. Summers. Bob Summers, Secretary Summers. He's technically acting secretary, but he's doing a heck of a job of acting, so I just call him Secretary Bob Summers. He was appointed the acting secretary of Maryland Department of the Environment by Governor Martin O'Malley on December 6th. As you all probably know, that Sherry Wilson had stepped down from that position. He leads the department's planning, regulatory, management, and financing programs to protect public health, ensure a safe and reliable water supply, restore and protect air quality, water quality, wetlands and waterways, clean up contaminated land, and ensure proper management of hazardous and solid waste. He served the citizens of Maryland for 27 years in various capacities within Maryland's progressive and nationally recognized environmental programs, with an emphasis on scientific and technical issues related to water pollution control, drinking water protection, and federal, state, and local government environmental laws and regulations. Before that, he served as the director of MDE's Water Management Administration, and prior to that, served for 4 years as director of MDE's Technical and Regulatory Services Administration. He's been a key contributor to the multi-jurisdictional Bay program for many years and in many positions. He's a valuable asset to the program, so please welcome Secretary Bob Summers.
Thanks, Jeff. I guess this is on. I usually have a big mouth anyway, so hopefully everybody can hear. What I want to do in my 50 minutes, you said, is read this document to you. No, actually, this is for the Q&A session in case there's anything I don't remember. But what I want to do in my 5 minutes is just give you a quick overflight, and it's not death by PowerPoint. I'm just going to speak, but we have a lot of work to do. You think we had a lot of work to write this plan, you should stick around while we try to implement it. It's going to be a very interesting ride. So let me start at the top. Atmospheric deposition. I think everybody knows that it's a major contributor of nitrogen to Chesapeake Bay. We're not going to get there without doing significant atmospheric controls. The Bay program and EPA is going to basically assume responsibility for a certain part of that, but we in Maryland and a number of our colleagues in the Ozone Transport Commission think that EPA needs to go even further in order to achieve these goals. So Maryland has stepped out and implemented what we call the Healthy Air Act, which requires state-of-the-art controls for NOx, SOx, mercury, and on all of our coal-fired electric generating units in the state. In addition, it compelled us to join into the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which Governor O'Malley did very early in his term. And of course, no matter what your position on greenhouse gas reduction, it equates to energy conservation, and energy conservation equates to reductions in nitrogen emissions, and that's good for the Bay, so that's good enough for me. We need to do this, and we need to do it aggressively. So Maryland has taken that step, and we would certainly urge that these types of controls be compelled throughout the airshed. Tougher on-road tailpipe standards, industrial, commercial, and institutional boilers, known as ICI, cement kilns, marine engines, locomotives are a few of the things that we need to deal with there. I already mentioned our initiatives on the Healthy Air Act and RGGI. We implemented the Clean Cars legislation in 2007, and beginning this model year, all the cars sold in Maryland, new cars, have to meet the highest standards permitted under federal law. We've got all kinds of transportation initiatives to try to reduce vehicle miles traveled, and energy initiatives. The governor's committed to a 15% reduction in energy use by the state by 2015. We've got a renewable portfolio standard, 9.5% by 2020, and other programs to enhance our energy conservation efforts. Wastewater treatment plants. Maryland has been out in front in upgrading wastewater plants. The majority of our 67 largest facilities already have what we call biological nutrient removal. Since '85, we've reduced NMP by 58% for N, 74% for P. And with our Bay Restoration Fund, we're upgrading these plants to enhance nutrient removal, and we'll be achieving over 70% reduction by the time that's fully implemented in 2017. Stormwater management. Maryland's Stormwater Management Act of 2007 requires implementation of environmental site design to the maximum extent practicable. We call it ESD to the MEP. And I know there's a lot of questions about exactly what that means, and we are working very hard with all of our local jurisdictions, 23 counties, Baltimore City, and to implement that across the state. Basically what it equates to, we have an updated stormwater design manual, 2010 design manual, that lays out the regulatory changes, basically describes where we need to go: green roofs, porous pavements, rain gardens, native plants, replacing asphalt and lawns on new development and redevelopment. And this wasn't without a huge amount of controversy. As you can imagine, anybody involved with Maryland session last term is aware of that. Municipal stormwater permits, of course, we're not going to get there without attacking the 90% or so of the land that's developed already. And our municipal stormwater permits, very aggressive. We negotiated the first one with Montgomery County. We're in the process of rolling out those permits on all the other large counties in the state. And in our WIP, we've committed our Watershed Implementation Plan, if you've been under a rock, is requiring this on even the phase 2 jurisdictions, which are smaller counties and municipalities across the state. So there's a lot of requirements there. Stormwater, of course, is one of the major challenges in this new Watershed Implementation Plan because it is so expensive. And really, the primary objective, of course, is to save our streams and prevent erosion and that kind of thing. It also gives us nitrogen and phosphorus benefit, but if you just look at the N or the P cost per pound, it doesn't seem like a very cost-effective thing to do. But the bottom line is we are not going to achieve our goals without dealing with this stormwater problem. We have a new general permit for construction, which until EPA pulled back their effluent limitation guideline, we'd actually proposed that. We're anxiously waiting for EPA to come out with a revised ELG, which will set a turbidity limit on construction sites. We have out our 2010 management Maryland standards and specs for soil erosion and sediment control, and those will be adopted very shortly. This will make a big difference in further controlling the sediment, which is part of our TMDL. Septic systems, we have a state law that requires on-site systems in the critical area, new and replacement, to use what we call best available technology for nitrogen removal. And we've got 14 approved systems. We have a system set up that allows new technologies, new systems, once they can prove that they actually work, to come into that program. And in our Watershed Implementation Plan, we commit over the phase 2 process to develop a strategy for getting the rest of the on-site or septic systems in the critical area done in our Watershed Implementation Plan. Managing growth, we have a strategy laid out there that basically would allow us two ways to deal with growth. One is through our cap on our wastewater treatment plants based on design standards. There's some capacity for growth in our wastewater plants, but anything beyond that would need to be offset, and we've got a proposal in the WIP for how that offset process will be developed through regulations adopted over the next couple of years. Finally, just touch on briefly agriculture. We've got expanded cover crop program. We had record sign up for cover crops this year, over 500,000 acres, and initial indications are that a very high percentage of that, higher than what we normally get, was actually planted this year. Improvements in the nutrient management law, best management practice implementation, stream buffers. We have new concentrated animal feeding operation permits. We were the first state in the Bay watershed to be approved under the new EPA rule, stream fencing, manure transport, etc. So there's a lot of details in here. There are a lot of things going on. We have huge challenges ahead of us. Sean, we're actively or anxiously waiting the schedule for phase 2. We've got a lot of local governments that are teed up to work on this. We are getting a lot of concern about getting the model results as soon as possible to guide that process, but I think everybody's aware of that that concern those issues. So I think I'll save the rest for Q&A, but just suffice it to say this is a huge plan we have here. It's an expensive plan. When you add up the costs that we put in here, it's the tune of about $10 billion. We figure we have about half of that, so it's a big lift, particularly in this very difficult economic climate that we're in. But Governor O'Malley had a sustainability summit on Friday, and we had, I guess that's my signal, we had depth charges are next, I guess. The Sustainability Summit drew something like 700 people on Friday. Probably many of you were there. I was also at the Jobs Summit the week before. Of course, we've been hearing jobs, jobs, jobs all through the election. That summit drew about 300, maybe 400 people. So basically double the interest, double the number of people at our sustainability conference. So I think that's a pretty good indication of where Marylanders are coming from. So thank you very much.
I apologize for my phone ringing. It's probably Frank doing it, just saying, oh, watch Corbin squirm up there. Well, thank you. Quick, what's on page 247, Bob?
I have no idea. I'll look it up, though.
Well, I was just joking.
I know.
All right, we're going to fly right down the line here. Next up, representing D.C., where we sit this evening, is Dr. Hamid Karimi, and he's doctor. You're going to notice there's a lot of higher education degrees up here. I felt really undereducated when I started reading all these bios of these people. Dr. Karimi has 25 years of experience in the environmental management field. He is currently Deputy Director of the District Department of the Environment, and he oversees a number of divisions, including stormwater management, fisheries and wildlife, watershed protection, and water quality. And some of the issues that he oversees are MS4 permit programs, TMDLs, regulation and management of wetlands and groundwater, sediment and erosion control, stream and Anacostia River restoration, pollution prevention, monitoring, and Chesapeake Bay restoration. And somewhere in there he gets to go home and sleep a couple hours a night too. So please welcome Dr. Karimi.
Thanks, Dr.
And this is a really, really nice podium. If anybody wants to use it up here, you're welcome to.
Since I'm not as energetic as Bob is, I'm going to use the speaker. And Jeff mentioned Dr. Karimi. I just have to tell you this short little thing that when I got my graduate degree and went back home to visit, I remember one of my dad's friends called me Dr. Karimi, and my dad right away said he's not a real doctor. He has a PhD, and just pretty much that settles it, and ever since I sort of discourage folks to call me doctor. If you look at the agenda there, the person that's supposed to be talking here is Christopher Tolu. Unfortunately, he had to attend a cabinet meeting, and hearing from everyone else that there would be a reception afterwards with open bar and dance and everything, I think he would have had a lot more fun being here rather than being back at the ranch and dealing with the budget and interesting issues that he has to deal with. And since I have so much time, I have put a long PowerPoint together, and again, 15, 20, 30 minutes. So I thought I'll just move the hand to move forward, and we'll just give you a very quick summary of where we are in our WIP and TMDL in DC. I have, where is it? Okay, well, that's wonderful. That's great. That's great. That helps. All right. Well, one of the unique things about DC is that I believe DC is the only jurisdiction in the entire Bay watershed that everything that we have in our WIP and TMDL is regulated. So as a consequence, just about everything that we have there is very transparent. Not to say everybody else is not transparent, but we have to report pound for pound on a very regular basis. And the implementation of everything that we have in our WIP is very, very difficult, primarily because we are all urban. And the options that we have are very challenging, and nearly all of them are extremely expensive. Jeff. Just to give you an idea of where we are in context of the Chesapeake Bay, you notice that the amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment that we have to remove in context of the entire load reduction is really negligible. And when I get to the cost, you will notice that for that tiny little bit, except for nitrogen, that we are slightly over 1%, everything else is less than 1% of what we have to do in the context of general Chesapeake Bay. Give you a feel for the areas of the DC that we are dealing with. The part in the middle that sort of like mustard yellow is combined sewer. We are right now where we are sitting is in combined sewer area. I'm not going to go over what combined sewer is. I'm sure everybody knows that. Everything there that is sort of yellowish light cream color is separate sewer, is MS4 area. And the green part that you see around Potomac, Rock Creek, and Acacia is mostly federal land that they have some unique attributes. Essentially, they are partially drained directly to the streams rather than going through our MS4. We have three types of sources in DC. We have the Blue Plain Wastewater Treatment Plant, CSO, combined sewer, and MS4 area. And as I mentioned earlier, all of these are managed through regulatory process, consent, permit, so forth. The various sources we have, if you look at the nitrogen, lion's share of nitrogen in DC is from our wastewater treatment plant. A very small amount of it is from combined sewer. Phosphorus the same way, a little bit more comes from our stormwater, MS4 area, and sediment is the area where we have significant amount of sediment coming from our MS4 part. That's the last pie chart on the right. And looking at the amount that we have to remove to get to our targets, nitrogen is about 19%, phosphorus about 20%, and sediments is the one that we have tremendous amount of challenge because we have to reduce our loads by about 67%. And that's the area, just for everybody's information, we don't have a lot of farms in DC. If you have noted, everything pretty much is paved. And we have one of the most strict soil erosion control regulations in the entire country. If you have soil disturbance activity that's 50 square feet and above, you have to get a permit. And you have a soil erosion control processes on your site. So we have a lot of challenges how to deal with this particular issue. Just to give you a general idea of where a lot of these processes are and how much it costs, removal of nitrogen and phosphorus at Blue Plains will cost about $1 billion. It's well underway, and tomorrow you're going to hear from George Hawkins, and he routinely reminds us when we were discussing the development of the WIP and TMDL with his staff that he's spending over $1 million a day, well over $1 million a day on both ENR and long-term control plan. We anticipate that that process would be completed by 2017, 2015, but they anticipate would be closer to 2017. Long-term control plan has started. The process started for one of the largest tunnels on Anacostia. The cost in 2002 is about $2.2 billion. And the MS4 permit that we anticipate would be issued shortly cost about $13.2 million for Department of Environment. The total cost, this is the cost that we are paying from our stormwater utility. The total cost to the district is roughly about an order of magnitude higher than this, the annual cost. Now, the main reason I put this thing there is to give you a feel for what it costs, as Bob mentioned, about $10 billion in Maryland. Here we are looking at somewhere about $3.3 billion in DC, and that's just for reducing about less than 1% of the pollutants that we are supposed to remove in the Chesapeake Bay, which essentially tells you how challenging and expensive it is in DC to do things. One other issue that I have to remind you is that all of these costs, all the three categories, are paid by the same ratepayers. We have stormwater utilities, and it's like a balloon. You squeeze it in this side, it pops on the other side. So considering the fact that our largest reduction would be from Blue Plains wastewater treatment plants, it would be critical to seek federal help here, because Blue Plains has a unique situation. First of all, it's the largest advanced wastewater treatment plants in the world, and it's one of those wastewater treatment plants that's shared between Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And its success really depends on all of us together helping making sure that that happens. I'm sure George Hawkins will ask the same thing tomorrow. But that's, I think, would end up to be my last one. Oh, I did okay. Thank you.
Next up, from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have the Secretary himself here, John Hanger. And John is the Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and as Secretary, he manages an agency of over 2,700 employees with a mission to protect Pennsylvania's air, land, and water from pollution and provide for the health and safety of its citizens through a cleaner environment, working as partners with individuals, organizations, governments, and businesses. He also chairs the Pennsylvania Energy Development Authority, the Environmental Quality Board, and the Appalachian State's Low-Level Radiation Waste Commission. That's a long one. In addition, Mr. Hanger is Vice Chairman of PennVest and a member of the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. Prior to that, for about 10 years, he was President and CEO of Citizens for Pennsylvania's Future, which you all know as Penn Future. And he was particularly involved with Penn Future's work to promote renewable energy and energy conservation. And he has degrees from Duke and, from reading his bio, I didn't realize, a law degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Secretary Hanger.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I've got about 7 more days left as Secretary. I promised Governor Rendell that I would stay right till the end, and that's 7 days away. But I wanted to come down tonight because I think this is a crucial piece of work that has gotten to a critical point in Pennsylvania, as well as, of course, throughout the Bay watershed. Pennsylvania represents 46%, or has 46% of the Bay watershed in it. And of course, we have not 1 yard of bay front. And that's one of the both geographic and political realities that creates certain, I think, challenges that I hope the other states, particularly those who do have bayfront, and the EPA would understand as we go forward. 46% of the Bay watershed, none of the bayfront, none of the icons, the yachts, the crabs, et cetera. Now, I'm also very proud to say that Pennsylvania cares, and Pennsylvanians care passionately about their water, and that history is actually long and goes back to the passage of the Clean Streams Law, when conservationists and those who hunt and fish took on an industry. It was called King Coal at the time, and it really was King Coal at the time. This was in the 1930s, and passed an incredibly strong law, as strong or stronger than the Clean Water Act in many respects, and it's the Pennsylvania Clean Streams Law. So Pennsylvanians have a very long commitment to water and to their local waters. I'm also very proud of Pennsylvanians for taking the Bay itself very seriously and caring a great deal about the Bay itself, even though many communities will, at least people in many of those communities, will never ever come to the Bay itself and see the Bay itself. When I encounter Pennsylvanians, they care about their local waters first and foremost. That's absolutely true, and I'm sure you can understand that. But they also care about what's going on in the Bay itself and what Virginians and Delawareans and Marylanders are having to deal with as they try to save the Bay. I think it's fair to say that the process in Pennsylvania on the Bay has reflected a lot of work and a lot of success over the years, but like elsewhere, not enough work or success. In terms of the TMDL process, it has not been an easy process. It's been a very difficult process, at least in Pennsylvania. And I can tell Pennsylvanians who wonder whether or not this plan is fair to Pennsylvanians that we negotiated very, very toughly with the EPA. And I think that's the single most important thing I can tell you and the people in Pennsylvania. We negotiated toughly with the EPA. This is not a writ that was accepted by Pennsylvania without a lot of pushback, a lot of arguments, frankly, some very harsh, tough words at different points. Pennsylvania has agreed to this plan because we believe it's consistent with the interests of Pennsylvania first and foremost. We believe it's consistent with our own state laws, and we also do believe it is consistent and required by the federal laws that we are very obviously sworn to uphold as well. Those tough negotiations led to a plan that is indeed ambitious and that is indeed going to be difficult to achieve. And I take the admonition of about 5 minutes relatively seriously, so I'm not going to be in a position to walk you through all of the details of the Pennsylvania plan. Let me say it's been a privilege to provide leadership to the professional staff at the Department of Environmental Protection. These are public servants, public employees who have done great, great work. And they have, in fact, engaged with the public all across Pennsylvania from all walks of life, from the environmental community to the agriculture community to small, hard-pressed communities who have seen the good economic days long since past, who are turning to their constituents and saying that water bills could be $600, $700, $800, $1,000 or so. These state employees are a jewel, just as the Chesapeake Bay are a jewel. It's also, I think, fair to say that the EPA was a good partner in this discussion. It was tough negotiations, but the EPA did, in fact, negotiate. They demonstrated flexibility. They demonstrated at the end of the process that they were willing to listen and were willing to be creative. In very quick and very general terms, and if there's time for in the question and answer, I'd be glad to get into more details. Let me simply say that this plan does have a number of important factors. First is simply a better reporting of the existing work. Now, that can sound almost artificial and phony, but the scoreboard, at least at this point, for our work is a model. And the model and the results of the model are only good as the inputs. So actually, making sure that the inputs are full and correct is critically important. And at least in Pennsylvania, we know that we have not been inputting all of the reductions and all of the good work that has been done. So it's not phony. It's trying to make sure that the guidance that we get from a model is more accurate than not. The second thing is a very, very real commitment to increasing the amount of best practices. So this isn't new, this isn't rocket science, but it's doing more of the good stuff and doing it quicker. And our plan is full of such items. Since we signed since 2009 when we committed to the TMDLs, I have been having personal meetings with our professional staff every 3 months to track where we are on the milestones. And we go through about 30 different work plans which represent each of these practices that we have made a commitment to accelerating. And we measure exactly where we are in terms of reductions achieved and the amount. In some cases, we're well ahead. In some cases, we are behind. I think on balance, we are pretty much on schedule to the 2011 milestone. So more of the best practices. It's things like, in that category, we have made a commitment to every year doing a 1 million pound nitrogen project. And we did one of those in 2009, another one in 2010, through existing best practices. And I have to say, in 2009, what allowed us to finance it was the stimulus plan, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which is attacked by so many and defended by far too few, and has done tremendous, tremendous work for the environment in Pennsylvania, as well as as well as for the job creation of Pennsylvania. It's been a vital piece of environmental improvement as well as economic recovery. The next item I would tell you is new initiatives. The Bay is not going to be cleaned up and if we just do more reporting of work and more of the existing sort of tried and true practices and activities, things like cover crops and no-till and buffers, things like reducing atmospheric deposition. Pennsylvania has reduced NOx deposition from 240,000 tons a year to 180,000 tons since 2003. I can go on. Initiatives, and we have been allowed to create 100 to commercialize rapidly existing technologies to take manure off the land and out of the environment and convert it into usable products. Pennsylvania has committed to $15 million a year. We believe 50 million of the 100 million should come from states and 50 million should come from the federal partners. We have committed to 15 million a year, and to just show that we are walking this talk, last week we approved $15 million for a project called Energy Works in Adams County. This is a manure to essentially energy project at Hillendale Farm. It's going to remove 1 million pounds of nitrogen itself per year. We've also approved $7 million of state money for another project called Bionol in Lancaster County. We've put a lot of state money already into commercializing these innovative projects. And yes, I know the difference between just a traditional digester that doesn't necessarily get the nutrients out and these advanced systems that in fact do have major water quality benefits. But without the EPA and DOE and USDA really prioritizing the $100 million fund, the Bay will not be cleaned up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. And I do personally thank you for your personal interest and your personal dedication in the Bay restoration effort over the years. I wish you well in whatever your next endeavor may be. Next up from the Commonwealth of Virginia is Anthony Moore. And Anthony currently serves as Assistant Secretary of Natural Resources for Virginia, which is probably the most powerful and prestigious position in all of the Bay watershed, which that was my job for 4 years. So. But he's been doing that for about the last year. Prior to his appointment in July, he worked for the federal government at the Environmental Protection Agency. I'm seeing a similar trend here in career paths. Appointed in 2003 at EPA, he worked for the EPA as a senior policy advisor for the Office of Water, and in that position he helped to develop innovative and sustainable market-based programs. Prior to serving at Environmental Protection Agency, he served as the Director of Policy for the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality from 2000 to 2002, where he managed the legislative, regulatory, public affairs, and constituent services activities for that agency. Prior to that, he was again in the Commonwealth as Assistant Secretary of Natural Resources under a different administration. Before all that, he worked for Dominion Power for 15 years. He's actually 84, 85? How old are you, man? But he worked for 15 years for Dominion Power as a chemist. He's a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute, and he lives in Richmond. Please welcome Anthony Moore.
Thank you, Jeff. I think I'll use your wonderful podium here, not because I like the podium so much, but so I can take the clicker out of Jeff's hands. We had a slideshow malfunction at one of our public meetings during the public comment period, so I'll feel more comfortable with this in my hand. Oh, does it work? There you go. I have a bunch of slides here, and there's more information that I know that you want to hear at this time, so I'm just going to try to breeze through this presentation here. Virginia's priorities for our Watershed Implementation Plan was to have a flexible program to implement cost-effective practices in each watershed. We wanted to use appropriate time frames for each sector to achieve significant cost-effective reductions. It's essential that the federal government help us to fund our plan, and also it's essential that the federal facilities do their part in reducing their loads to the Chesapeake Bay. Of course, as everyone has said, this is an adaptive management program, and we expect to adjust this WIP as we evaluate our program. The development of the WIP started in 2009. We started reviewing our current programs. Current programs are the cornerstone of this Watershed Implementation Plan. We don't talk a lot about the current programs. Most of the time when I give presentations, I talk about the new programs that we're developing. In 2009, we started a stakeholders advisory group. We had 40 members of that group. We also had a panel that was comprised of subject matter experts in 3 different sectors. So they helped us to establish what we called a enhanced program implementation level. So this is the level, sort of a baseline that our stakeholders groups use to develop our plan. Of course, the WIP was submitted on September the 3rd, and EPA accepted our WIP into their TMDL. Our Watershed Implementation Plan meets all of our targets for the basins for 2017. I'm going to skip through this because I'll give you some more detail about these programs in the next slides. Let's see. One of the important portions of our plan is to expand our nutrient credit exchange program. In 2005, a cap was established for each watershed under our State Water Control Board issued watershed general permit. Now, under this permit, point sources are allowed to trade credits under this watershed permit. We want to try to expand this program so that agriculture, stormwater, on-site septic, as well as wastewater facilities can buy and sell credits. This will give our localities the ability to choose the most cost-effective methods and to meet their allocations without stifling growth and economic development. This is a major undertaking for the Commonwealth, so we'll conduct a study for the next year, and we plan to have a new piece of legislation to submit to the General Assembly for 2012 to make changes in this program. For the James River, we have concerns with the allocations for the James River because of a unique chlorophyll criteria for the James. So we are looking at having a study on the chlorophyll standard to see if there's any new science. Depending on what our study ends up to be, we'll make changes to our regulatory approaches. We still are looking at making our 60% of our BMPs by 2017, and we also plan to have this study completed by 2017. So at that point, we'll evaluate the successes of our program. We'll also evaluate the chlorophyll standard and make changes in phase 3. For wastewater, again, we'll meet our wastewater allocations by 2017 because of that general permit that I mentioned earlier. In 2005, most of our major facilities went through an upgrade process at a cost of about $1.5 billion to the state and localities. A lot of those upgrades have been completed, but as the rest of those upgrades come online, this will help us to meet our goal. A bill was passed in 2010 that requires that new facilities that discharge over 1,000 gallons per day have to offset their entire nutrient load. We'll propose that facilities under 1,000 gallons per minute will also have to offset their loads. And we will propose that facilities that are at 1,000 and will upgrade to below 400,000 or 40,000 gallons per day will also have to offset their entire load. So basically, everyone will be, all new facilities will be offsetting their entire nutrient load. Also in the James River, we are looking at removal of about 2.6 million pounds of phosphorus from our wastewater facilities. For on-site septic, we want to require that new and replacement center, systems in the Chesapeake Bay use the new nutrient removal technology. Our Department of Health is currently updating their regulations to set performance standards for these new systems. We'll look at incentive programs to help people to upgrade their systems if they would like to, and we will also be requiring that a 5-year pump out for systems within the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed. Now, this is the part of the program that probably took us the longest time to put together, and is working with farmers. We're looking at covering all of our agricultural acres with resource management plans. And these plans will include, or could include, nutrient management plans, livestock exclusion, stream buffers, and other practices as needed. Now, this is going to be a farm-specific plan, so each farm in each watershed will be able to see how they can reduce their nutrient load into the bay. We will have acres coverage goals for these on our 2-year milestones, and if we don't meet our milestone goals, then we'll look at mandatory requirements. We're also looking at establishing and maintaining a database for all of our voluntary on-site best management practices that limit the amount of nutrient and sediments from entering the Chesapeake Bay. For urban and stormwater, we are looking at requiring nutrient management plans for all municipally owned lands that use fertilizer. This will include golf courses as well. We will be restricting the use of phosphate in fertilizers. We already have an agreement with Scotts that Scotts will have a phosphorus-free fertilizer in 2012, and this will help us to meet our goals, and we'll look at additional restrictions as needed in the future. We have proposed stormwater retrofits for existing development lands to reduce their loads to the bay, and new development will not be allowed to exceed the loads that were required by their previous land uses. And this tells you a little bit about the future dates. Jeff and Sean both talked about phase 2, and EPA is making adjustments to the model now, so we've been working very closely with them to make adjustments with the stormwater sector and also in accounting with the agricultural BMPs, and this will help us to meet our goals in the future. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Anthony. And then we have one more speaker before we go to our robust question and answer period. And the last speaker is from the state of Delaware. We have Kathy Bunting-Howarth with us, and she is the Director of the Division of Water Resources for Delaware's Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control. DENREC's Division of Water Resources is responsible for monitoring and assessing the quality of the state's ground and surface waters, overseeing the use and management of the state's water supplies, regulating wastewater discharges into surface water and subaqueous lands and tidal wetlands. They have 160 employees and a budget of $34 million. She's also worked extensively on tributary action teams and the TMDL as well. She is Dr. Bunting-Howarth, another doctor. She has a PhD in marine policy from the University of Delaware's Graduate College of Marine Science, a Juris Doctorate with Certificate in Environmental and Natural Resources Law from the University of Oregon. I'm guessing you got a little football game to watch tonight when you get home. And a Bachelor of Arts degree in Biology and International Relations from the University of Delaware. So please welcome Kathy Bunting-Howarth.
Thank you, and Jeff, if you could have your phone ring in 10 minutes, I'd appreciate it. I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank Secretary Hanger for his service. As an alternate sitting on the Principal Staff Committee, I've been able to sit across the table from the Secretary for quite a few years now, and let's put it this way, I always listen very carefully when he speaks. He's definitely an expert in the field, and I appreciate your service for the region. For my 10, 11 years in the state of Delaware, all I've been doing is TMDL implementation work. And so it just made sense that I would be here today talking about implementing the Delaware Watershed Implementation Plan. We're 1% of the watershed, but the watershed comprises a third of our state. So it is important that we do our part, not only for the health of the Chesapeake Bay, but more importantly to Delawareans for local water quality purposes. As you can see from this chart, most of the sources of nitrogen from the Delaware's portion of the watershed is from agriculture. So as you can imagine, a lot of our watershed implementation plan was focused on working with the agricultural community in order to achieve the reductions that were needed. The other thing is Delaware is an effective polluter and cleaner-upper of the bay. We have sandy soils and such, and so a lot of what goes in on the land does get to the Chesapeake Bay more readily, but we were willing to step up to the plate and maybe go a little further in order to get those reductions that we needed. Our WIP has several elements. Each of these elements listed on the screen had a task force assigned to it and a committee chair, and they met with multiple agencies throughout the state and other stakeholders when available, and we had the opportunity to do so in order to work on recommendations. We were very fortunate in that over the last 10 years, we've had watershed groups in the various sub-watersheds in Delaware that drain to the Chesapeake. So we had previously had extensive stakeholder outreach to address nutrient pollution reductions. We can actually count, we're like DC, we can count the number of point sources in our part of the Chesapeake watershed. Our industrial discharge reductions were around 60% of their current loads. For our additional wastewater treatment plants, municipal plants, we use their design capacity and a total nitrogen level of 4 and a total phosphorus level of 1 in order to figure out the annual loads for the WIP. So of course, we do want to still grow in these municipal areas, and we're looking forward to working with the plants to upgrade them as needed, as well as look at alternate forms of wastewater disposal, such as spray irrigation. We also address septic systems because it is a very rural area, and we're currently working statewide on our on-site regulation updates to incorporate performance standards for all large community-based systems in Delaware. And this is something we're going to do statewide and not just in the Chesapeake, because Delaware has nutrient impairments statewide. In addition, in the WIP, as a 2017 milestone, we're looking to do a separate regulatory activity for the Chesapeake where we'd propose advanced treatment systems for all septic systems within 1,000 feet of tidal waters. We're also looking to eliminate septic systems through the expansion of our municipal systems in order to benefit the Chesapeake and the local waters. We're also working on stormwater regulations right now, and we're looking to address total maximum daily loads and nutrient reductions, again, on a statewide basis. So this is going to be extremely helpful in meeting our Chesapeake obligations as well. We're going to be updating our industrial stormwater regulations to look at nutrients. And we only have one MS4 permit, but we're still going to incorporate our stormwater in a waste load allocation, since our state sediment and stormwater law will be addressing TMDLs and covers a larger area than any of the MS4 areas. We did have a land use section as well. We have a state planning law, so we're going to continue to work with our local governments to ensure that nutrient removal initiatives are in those plans. We're going to look at reducing fertilizer use on development lands, and we're also working with the University of Delaware, go Blue Hens, to do more of a watershed analysis and look at the growth through 2025 to make sure we have it right. We also have a process for developing our offsets and a trading program, because we realize that as we grow and develop, we're going to need to reduce, as we, increase our loading, we need to decrease in other areas. We have this tool we call the Nutrient Budget Protocol, and we have turned it over to one of EPA's contractors to see if we can use that, because it looks at a parcel pre and post development and tries to give you an estimate of what the loading is from that land use based on stormwater, wastewater, open space, and things of that nature. And additionally, we have a large section on agriculture. Delaware has a state nutrient management law. We already are requiring phosphorus-based nutrient management plans. However, the model wasn't able to account for that. So we're looking forward to working with our partners at the Bay program to ensure that the next time we do some model runs, that we make sure that all of the best management practices that we have science to base nutrient reductions on are available. We've recently revised our CAFO regulations, and they've taken effect. And we have a very successful manure relocation program, so we consider all of the farms in Delaware that drain to the Chesapeake that manure is no longer applied in excess. And we also have very aggressive goals, for the implementation of best management practices on agricultural lands. And like our partners, we realize that farmers are doing the right thing without cost share money. However, it's important to have the right programs on the ground, working with the right partners at the federal and local and state levels to ensure that we have a valid accounting of those and can take credit for the good work that our constituents are doing. We also have a section on restoration because, of course, we do a lot on the landscape that has secondary nutrient benefits. And so we have a group that's looking at how we can restore headwater forest, take some channelized streams and maybe turn them back into wetlands, and doing other creative things that are not only good for habitat purposes, but also for nutrient reductions. And of course, what we find the public really wants to know is, what are you doing on your lands, state of Delaware and federal government? And so we do have a section that addresses how we plan to manage our public lands into the future in order to control for nutrients. Now, what I should have asked you all to do is, as we all went through our presentations today, think about what our lunch speaker said. People care about jobs. Can you see those different proposals and imagine the job creation that could occur in some of these instances? It's also very important to realize that a healthy environment means a healthy economy, that maybe some short-term strains are going to lead to long-term economic benefits based on a healthy bay and healthy local waters. So thank you all for helping us implement these plans, because it's not just going to take the work of state regulators or state elected officials, but it's going to take people on the ground implementing practices and supporting different programs at the state and local and federal levels in order to make us all be successful. So thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to go to Q&A, and we're going to unfortunately have to limit this to about 10 or 15 minutes because Congressman Cummings is here, and we definitely want to give him some opportunity to speak to us. And Kathy, did you say Delaware is a good cleaner upper? Is that there's those fancy PhD words again. I like that. So we're going to go to Q&A. If you have a question for a specific jurisdiction, we can do that. If you have a more general question that you want everybody to answer, we can do that as well. But if we get any of those questions, we'll have to be very brief in our response. And if you want to ask EPA something, I'll be sure to find somebody at EPA that knows what they're doing and get back to you with an answer. But no, I can address EPA questions if you'd like. But we've got everybody ready. This is a very rare opportunity that we have senior officials from most of the jurisdictions here. So I'll open it up to Q&A. If you can just raise your hand if you have a question.
Thank you. But the Clean Streams Law of Pennsylvania keeps coming up in my work. And everybody says that there are no teeth whatsoever, and there was no language ever in legislation that allows you to use the Clean Streams Law to protect the waters of the Commonwealth. So I thought as an attorney, and also as an outgoing Secretary of DEP, you might have some kind of comments on that.
Well, my comment would be they're wrong. There are people who have paid good money because they've lost suits under the Clean Streams Law. So that sounds like teeth to me. I can't say anybody's gone to death row because of violating the Clean Streams Law, but something short of that, it's got teeth. So I think in the interest of time, I'll stop there.
Verna?
Secretary Hanger, I agree with the comment you made earlier. I think you talked during your presentation about how important it was to make sure the inputs are correct. And so my question is for you, Jeff, as the EPA person here. We wonder how you all are going to be looking at these WIP and their implementation over the next year to see if they actually are meeting those commitments that have been made. And I'll put one particular example on the table, and that is I saw a slide the other day where my state, Maryland, mentioned 91% of the nutrient management plans in the state had been implemented. And I do believe that's probably a little larger percentage than is claimed by the other states. And so I was just a little bit curious about how that makes the reasonable assurance test and how you all are going to be looking at that.
It's a great question, and I think our verification is going to have to get considerably strengthened as we move forward. Verna, it has been, quite honestly, a concern of mine that, you know, when we put out an annual report from the program every year, and the restoration meter is way ahead of the water quality meter. Now, I don't think there's any, you know, foot on the scale kind of stuff going on, but I think we're going to have to take a very close look at are each one of those practices that we're counting actually doing what we thought they're going to do. But now, at least now, we've got the opportunity to do that. We've got a new overarching tracking and accounting system at EPA that we're going to be unveiling soon. It may not be the best tool yet. I think we could turn it into a very good tool, though, over time, after everybody gets a look at it and sees how it does. But don't forget now that we've got 2-year milestones. Starting in January 2012, each state will turn in 2-year milestones, and we will be using the annual report from the Bay program, as the governor's directed us to show progress. So that is, if you think progress is not where it's supposed to be, or if we're counting something that shouldn't be counted, that is now your opportunity to get on the books and let us know what we're doing wrong.
Diane Cameron, Audubon Naturalist Society and NRDC. I have a similar question, which is about the nutrient trading. How do we assure that nutrient credit trading doesn't become just an empty shell game that might look good on paper, but in reality doesn't actually create true reduction?
You want me to answer that, or you want somebody from a state who's proposing to use trading, or? You do have to be careful with trading. I'll be honest with you. I've been a very outspoken advocate of trading. In 2005 in Virginia, when I was in the environmental community, I supported a bill, and Virginia has a very good program, but it's just point to point right now, which I really don't consider trading. I mean, that's because it's all done through the permitting program. I think there is a huge opportunity for trading to work. The bottom line with the TMDL is we have to get pounds out. Where it comes from, I mean, as long as it comes from geographically the right area, as long as we get those pounds out, it doesn't really matter the specific practices, as long as we get those pounds out from the right areas. And if trading can help, I think it's an absolute opportunity for us, but it's going to require significant tracking and accounting. You've got to have the program in place to show that what you're counting is happening on the ground. And we are only just now starting to get into this whole arena of moving out of point sources into agriculture or stormwater. I think it's got potential, but I think it has to be monitored and watched extremely closely.
I'd like to also speak to that. You're right. It has to be monitored. It has to have the accountability. It must be verified. Otherwise, it could be a shell game, and otherwise, investments that are trying to raise money are not going to be able to, in fact, raise money on a system where which lacks that kind of integrity. But I would also caution those in the environmental community who start from the premise that trading is per se a fraud. We have to drive the costs of cleaning up the bay down as much as is reasonably possible. Trading done right can in fact do that. There's been enormous success in the Clean Air Program in getting real reductions at a lower cost because of trading. Enormous success. And if anybody thinks that because we have a TMDL and the states have submitted a WIP, regardless of the political consequences within those states, and these states are different politically, different parties, different circumstances, but we've all submitted plans. If anybody thinks there aren't going to be people who aren't in this room, or maybe they are in this room, but nonetheless, from a very different perspective, trying to rip these plans up, got another thing coming. And what is driving their concern, and they have some legitimate concerns, is cost. And if you strangle trading by layering on one protection after another protection after another protection, so you have not only 100% insurance, but you have 110, 120, 1,000% insurance, you are in fact driving up the costs of complying, cleaning up the bay, and you're feeding the opposition and making the opposition stronger. So this whole issue of trading needs to be addressed with some sense of balance to what is a reasonable assurance and what becomes, in effect, a way of killing trading.
All right, folks, we're going to take one more question so that we don't keep Congressman Cummings waiting. Does anybody have one more burning question they'd like to ask? If not, I think we can. Peter? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for being here.